Welcome, it is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. I had mentioned my goal was 200 subscribers by the end of training camp. I believe we're at 230 now. Set a new goal, 1,000 subscribers by the end of the football season, whenever that may be for the Green Bay Packers. Let's hope it's in February. So if you're so inclined, please click the subscribe button. Always appreciative of all the support. Packers got smacked around by the Jets on Saturday night, preseason opener. I don't care about the final score. Exhibition games for a reason. Jets won 30-10 for what it's worth. I look at the preseason more for individual performances, who stood out, who didn't, who kind of told the tale of the tape. And I thought it'd be fun. I thought it'd be appropriate to do a stock up, stock down video, picking 3 players whose stock went up, 3 that went down. And I'll tell you this, if you watch the game, you'll understand it was far easier, and I don't like being a pessimist, but it was far easier to pick 3 guys whose stock dropped a little bit in this game than it was to find 3 who ascended in the right direction. We will be glass half full. We will be optimist and start with the better side of things. 3 guys whose stock went up in this game. And I think there's only one guy to really start with. It's Amar Johnson, the rookie running back out of South Dakota State. The former Jackrabbit had the only touchdown in the game. The lone touchdown for the Packers came in the fourth quarter on a 39-yard scamper from Amar Johnson, who did a really good job and got a really good block from Anthony Belton, and we'll get to him in a second. But Amar Johnson found the hole on the right side, kind of pinballed off a would-be tackler, and then cut it back to the left and waltzed his way into the end zone on a 39-yard touchdown run. Needed a little help up on the Lambeau leap. Finished the game with 7 rushes for 67 yards, and again was, you talk about spotlight plays and really just highlights for the Packers. One of the few came from Amar Johnson on that 39-yard touchdown run. Again, it was the only touchdown of the game for the Packers. I will say it's a crowded running back room. Like, Josh Jacobs is your bell cow. Marshawn Lloyd, when he comes back to full health, he's making the roster. And then for the RB3 spot, you're going to likely have either Emmanuel Wilson or Chris Brooks. And if the Packers opt to keep 4 running backs, it'll probably just be both of those guys. And so the reason I bring that up is Amar Johnson was one of the few bright spots for the Packers on Saturday night. Again, 7 carries, 67 yards, and a 39-yard touchdown run. It is going to be incredibly difficult, really, really hard for him to grind out a 53-man roster spot, just given the numbers and the quality that the Packers have in the running back room. Now, factoring in his situation, this is an undrafted rookie, and I don't know what Amar Johnson's goals are, but I would have to imagine if this is a guy who can emerge from training camp the preseason and earn a spot on the Packers practice squad. Again, this isn't a Packers team that's looking around like, we got 1 or 2, good backs, and then who knows after that. Like, they got Emmanuel Wilson would make most rosters. Chris Brooks would make a lot of rosters. Then you have Marshawn Lloyd and you have Josh Jacobs, again, who is your bell cow running back. Like, it's a really good running back room. And I know there's questions with Marshawn Lloyd and his injuries already. He missed most of his rookie campaign in 2024 with a variety of injuries, which came to a tilt and firmly ended his season with appendicitis last winter, right when he was set to return from a couple of previous injuries. And now he's hurt again, and he's dinged up, and you hope to see him back soon. But when Marshawn Lloyd is healthy, he is absolutely 100% unequivocally making this roster. And so I would view this as a success for Amar Johnson if at the end of the summer he's able to earn a spot on the practice squad, because I do look at his performance on Saturday, and I view it as, man, if he goes and does that next week against Indianapolis in the second preseason game and in the third preseason game against Seattle, I don't know what exactly Amar, and it's kind of just sucks saying this, but it's the truth, it's the reality. I don't know what Amar Johnson could do in the preseason and training camp where he would come out on the other side on the 53-man roster. It has nothing to do with him. It's not, being negative about anything he's brought to the table. He was, again, one of the lone bright spots on Saturday night. It's just an undrafted rookie making the roster with the names and the quality that the Packers have at running back. It's going to be a difficult thing to do. So I would view it as a success if I were him to try to carve out a role on the practice squad. So we'll see. But he had one of the few highlights for the Packers, Amar Johnson. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I believe we're at 230. On an upward trajectory, 1,000 by the end of the season. That's the goal. As we keep churning out content. Stock up, stock down. Packers lose to the Jets. Don't care about the final score. Wouldn't have cared if the Packers won 30-10. Just looking at individuals, who stood out in a good way or a bad way. This one I might be a little biased on. I don't know if I was wearing the goggles. I was really focused in on some of his snaps. Brenton Cox Jr. He had a TFL. He had a quarterback pressure. And I was so curious with him. This is a guy who was a healthy scratch for pretty much the first half of last year. Like, Brenton Cox gets a roster spot, healthy scratch. Packers trade Preston Smith around the deadline. And then Brenton Cox Jr. started getting his opportunities. You know, this wasn't a guy who played in the first half of last year, got some snaps, and just didn't stand out and just kind of lagged his way along. Like, no, he was a healthy and active. But once he got his opportunities in the second half of 2024, he stood out. And, you know, dare I say, you could make a case that in the second half of the season, Brenton Cox Jr., you could make a case he was the most productive defensive end for the Packers. I still think you give it to Rashawn Gary because things really seemed to click for him in the second half. First year, Jeff Hafley, new defensive coordinator, new system, and Rashawn Gary got off to a really slow start in 2025 and then really locked in the second half of the season. I don't know if I'll say really locked in, but he was far better. So I'd probably still give the nudge and the edge to Rashawn Gary, but Brenton Cox Jr. was that good. And I was so curious throughout this offseason wondering, like, was this a flash in the pan with Brenton Cox Jr.? Like, was just this a spurt of a couple of months where he just got locked in, dialed in, and, you know, figured it out for that short period of time, and then it's going to fizzle out? Or did he use 2024 as a springboard? Did he use it to carry that momentum into the offseason, into OTAs, into training camp, into the preseason? You know, all accounts for how training camp's gone so far, he's been pretty damn good. And then we see it on Saturday night with a TFL and a quarterback pressure. At times, he looks like he's shot out of a cannon. I'm hoping the momentum is carrying over. And in the defensive end spot, I brought it up in a couple of videos. It's so fascinating to me. Rashawn Gary's a lock. Lucas Van Ness is a lock. I know we haven't seen him yet due to injury, but Colin Oliver, you used, what was it, a fifth-round pick on him? Wasn't a sixth, wasn't a seventh. He's probably making the roster. Baron Sorrell making the roster, fourth-round pick out of Texas. Then you have Kingsley Enagbari and Brenton Cox Jr., and I found it very interesting. And it's completely fine. This is a, you know, subjective topic, a subjective take. But I have seen some Packers content creators when they're doing 53-man roster predictions, and I had one at the end of OTAs, and I'll have one right before cutdown day at the end of the summer. I saw a lot of people phrase it as, you know, it's going to be Gary Van Ness, Sorrell Oliver, and then Enagbari or Brenton Cox Jr., where I look at it, and I'm like, man, they're still... I'm very hesitant on Lucas Van Ness. I know there's hype, and, you know, he looks much better so far this summer than he did last summer when he was dealing with a thumb injury, and this is his third year, and he's a former first-round pick, and you want to see the pieces of the puzzle all come together for Lucas Van Ness. But there is still a risk in completely banking on that when you haven't seen it if you're the Packers. I would like them to keep 6 defensive ends on the 53-man roster coming out of training camp and coming out of the preseason. I say that to say this. If it comes down to a debate and you're really number crunching, I don't see at this point how you keep Brenton Cox Jr. off the 53-man roster. You know, unless he really takes a nosedive the rest of the summer, I just don't see that happening. He's already been productive enough this summer in training camp. You saw glimpses of it on Saturday night. We saw it for half of a season in 2024 when he finally got his opportunities. I'm getting to a spot where I would be very, very surprised if Brenton Cox Jr. wasn't on the 53-man roster, and hell, if he wasn't seeing consistent snaps, not starter snaps, but consistent snaps week in and week out this year. Like, I think he's that promising. He's been that good, and he clearly took what he produced in 2024 when given the chance and has steamrolled it into a ball of momentum so far into 2025. And again, I might have worn the goggles a little bit, saying his stock's up after Saturday, because I really focused in on some of his snaps and some of his reps. But I'm impressed with Brenton Cox Jr. And finally, I cheated because I used 2 names. I thought the interior of the offensive line was kind of gross at times. We'll get to that in a few minutes. I thought the interior of the offensive line struggled throughout certain junctures on Saturday night. Thought the exterior, specifically left tackle and right tackle, when it was being held down by Jordan Morgan on the left side, Anthony Belton on the right side, pretty damn good. And Jordan Morgan, fascinating name, fascinating player. to track this offseason. First-round pick last year, dealt with some injuries. Tried him out at right guard in a few spots, a few games last year before his season ended. And this year, this offseason, it hasn't been, glowing reviews so far of Jordan Morgan. The coaching staff isn't, raining negativity down on him or hammering him home, at least when they talk to the media. But, Matt LaFleur and Steno, they've been asked about Jordan Morgan and have pretty much hinted at, consistency, stacking days, needing to do that, needing to really, focus in on this left tackle spot. And if it doesn't work, potentially they could try him at guard again like they did last year when he was a rookie. But I thought Saturday night, and PFF reflected this, Jordan Morgan's pretty damn good. I was worried about him. First-round pick last year, deals with some injuries, season comes to an end. So far this offseason, it's been, dare I say, just a little bit of a roller coaster ride, peaks, valleys type thing. Jordan Morgan had 36 snaps at left tackle on Saturday night. 23 of those were pass blocking snaps or pass blocking reps. 0 quarterback pressures allowed for the second-year offensive lineman out of Arizona. Now, I firmly believe Rasheed Walker is going to be your starting left tackle in 2025, and if the Packers have it their way, and if the plan comes to be that they would prefer it, it's that Jordan Morgan really takes a hold of that left tackle spot and is the starting left tackle in 2026. If that doesn't work out, find a spot for him at guard and see if that works. And then Anthony Belton, who I mentioned briefly earlier, your second-round pick out of North Carolina State this past April, slides in maybe at right guard when Rasheed Walker and Sean Ryan hit free agency. Again, kind of stinks. I like Rasheed Walker. I'm a Rasheed Walker guy, but they used a first-round pick on Jordan Morgan. Nature of the beast, they're going to have to find out what they have in him at some point in time. And it just lines up where I think Rasheed Walker's ahead of that competition so far. I don't even think it's neck and neck. I think Rasheed Walker, even though he's been dinged up a little bit, and he was a scratch last night to play, Rasheed Walker, I believe, will be your starting left tackle once he's back at full health here. Should be, obviously, by week 1 against Detroit. And Jordan Morgan will start the season as a reserve, but the long plan for Green Bay is for the long play is for Morgan to be the left tackle in 2026 if he can keep putting together performances like we saw Saturday against the Jets. Again, 36 snaps at left tackle, 23 of those were pass blocking reps, 0 quarterback pressures allowed. Then you have Belton. And if you go back and watch, I'll count it as a damn good block, even though he might have stepped on the foot of the defender. On that Amar Johnson touchdown run, Belton was one of the key cogs to help pave the way on a nice pancake block, putting his defender into the turf on his back. And Belton played right tackle, and it interesting, to say the least, because you have Zach Tom, you just forked over all this money. And I guess, theoretically, Green Bay in the future could, Zach Tom's so good, right, that you could pivot him around the offensive line if Belton only works at right tackle. Jordan Morgan, same thing with him if he only works at left tackle. And so Zach Tom could slide around, but I think this was just, let's put Belton at right tackle and see what we got on Saturday night. 42 snaps at right tackle, 0 quarterback pressures allowed, and a couple of really good blocks that when you're watching a play live, we follow the ball, but once in a while something else stands out, right? And there were a couple of those blocks, especially on the Amar Johnson run, where you're like, what the hell happened here? And then you see the replay, and Anthony Belton's just going to work. And so I thought he and Jordan Morgan, very, very promising on Saturday. But now it's, LaFleur talks about stacking days, stacking reps, stacking performances. And that's especially what Jordan Morgan needs to do to kind of keep staying in the good graces, I guess, of the Packers and the coaching staff, because it has been inconsistent for him so far, which is fine. But Saturday night was good. So I had Jordan Morgan and Anthony Belton on the stock up portion of this. You could have put Daniel Whalen out there. That golden right boot did its thing, and there were a few punts that the Packers had. So Whalen was out there, and he was pretty good too. But my stock up, Amar Johnson, one of the lone highlights, Brenton Cox Jr., and then Jordan Morgan and Anthony Belton. Mitch, I am on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Always appreciative of all the support. Let me know what you guys and gals think in the comments. Your stock up, your stock down. Stock down, too, I guess you could say. The Packers' energy, kind of just at times going through the motions. I felt like, I know Steno called the plays, which I'm not calling him out, but it seemed like in that first half when Love and Willis were in there, it was like slant, 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 slant. So, I don't know. It was pretty vanilla, but as to be expected for large parts of a preseason game. All right, stock down. This is the part that's not fun. I will note, right, we'll preface by saying there's time. There's time for these guys to turn it around, certainly. There's 2 more preseason games. There's plenty of training camp left, but not good from these three in particular. And really, I mentioned Amar Johnson, top spot for stock up. I don't know, who else. I mean, maybe Jordan Morgan because he's a first-round pick, and people were really excited about how he looked at left tackle. But I thought Amar Johnson was like the runaway for the top spot on stock up. And I'm not necessarily ranking him, but when I thought of stock down and who struggled, there were two names that came to mind. So we'll start with those. And we'll begin with Mecole Hardman. Like you're battling for a roster spot. Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs, first-round pick Matthew Golden, third-round pick Savion Williams. And I know Savion Williams is battling concussion symptoms, still trying to come back. We didn't see him on Saturday night. But Wicks, Reed, Dobbs, Golden, Savion Williams. They're not going anywhere. Oh, yeah, you got Christian Watson for your, not sixth on the depth chart, but that's a sixth receiver. Whenever he gets off the PUP list, October, November, December, whatever that may be. Like, you're Mecole Hardman, you're Malik Heath, you're some of these other wide receivers. Like, you're battling, really those two, though. You're battling for a spot on the 53-man roster. And Mecole Hardman dropped a pass in the first quarter. I think it was the first quarter. And then I look at this guy, and I'm like, what's the best route or the most efficient route for Mecole Hardman to make this team? I know he's got Super Bowl rings. I know he caught a walk-off in the Super Bowl in overtime. Go look at the numbers last year. He hardly played for Kansas City. Like, he was literally hardly on the field despite being healthy and active for most of the season. Hardly played. And so I'm like, what is the best path? Because you already have 5 wide receivers locked in. And a lot of teams will just carry 5. 6 is fine. 7 starts to be a stretch because then you're really, having to slice down at other roster or at other positions. For Mecole Hardman, I looked at it this offseason and I was like, man, his best path here to make the roster, punt returner. It has been a thorn in the side for Green Bay for a few years now. Jaden Reed couldn't really grasp onto the role. Rich Bisaccia is trying to find something, your special teams coordinator, your assistant coach. And I thought, man, Mecole Hardman, he's got experience doing it. Like, that's his best chance to make the roster. And when you zoom it out a little bit more, I don't know what inside that building they're saying and they're thinking and they believe. And I certainly don't speak for all Packer fans. But I think I can say for a decent part of the fan base, this includes myself, we're not asking for a whole lot for punt returner. Just competence. Like, just competence. We're not asking Mecole Hardman, hey, every 3-4 weeks you better, bust off a 60, 70-yard return, you better house one. Like, that's unrealistic for any punt return. It'd be great if he did it. And certainly you want a couple of those throughout a season if there's opportunities to return punts. But I don't think Packer fans are asking for the world with their punt returner. It's competence, something that hasn't been displayed at the position in a while. And Mecole Hardman last night, 2 reps right out of the chute on punt return duty. The first one, backpedaling, receives it just inside his own 5-yard line and gets smothered. And you just know it's a no-no. And I know it's sometimes, I've never been a punt returner in the NFL. I know when you're looking up at the ball and you're backpedaling, you can lose track of where you're at on the field. But these are professionals. Mecole Hardman's been a punt returner before. He knows better. Backpedaling inside your own 5. I know sometimes preseason he knows he's not necessarily a lock for the roster, so he's got to stand out and he wants to make that big play. But you can overcompensate and then make a big mistake. And it wasn't like a colossal mistake, but you're backpedaling. You get in just a shade inside your own 5-yard line, you receive it, you get smothered. It's like, you got to let that bounce. And that's like punt returning 101. And when that happened, I'm like, man, I don't need Mecole Hardman to be an all-pro at punt returner. It'd be awesome. It'd be phenomenal. I just want competence. And then lo and behold, he gets a rep later on, lets it bounce a couple of times, muffs it, and the Jets recover it at the 10-yard line. And it's like we're going through this vicious cycle all over again. Your best chance to make this team is at punt returner. And your first opportunity in live game action, which is different than training camp, although, again, these are exhibitions. You take them with a grain of salt. Your first chance to prove the Packers your worth and what you can do at punt returner, not good. Like, flat out not good. Green Bay is looking around. Malik Heath had a couple of drops. Mecole Hardman, I mentioned, had a drop, 2 at wide receiver. These guys are not shoo-ins to make the roster. Far from it. And his first chance to show the team what he's got, just not good. Now, it's not done. It's not over. Mecole Hardman, Green Bay's not going to look at that one performance and say, he's done. Keep him around for the rest of training camp and preseason. No chance he makes the roster like that. That is also not the case. But for an area that has kind of plagued the Packers at times, like he got kick returner figured out. I know it wasn't a glowing year compared to the year prior for Keyshawn Nixon, but that's an all-pro kick returner. I know he fumbled the opening kickoff against Philadelphia and afterwards said he was done kick returning. If all things go according to plan, Keyshawn Nixon, I hope, is the kick returner this season for the Green Bay Packers. Punt returner is a question mark, and it has been a question mark. And Mecole Hardman had an opportunity to really just grasp it with just competence. Let that ball bounce. If that ball bounces at the 4 and it sticks, nobody's like, why the hell didn't you catch it? It's inside the 5-yard line. Let it bounce. Odds are it's going into the end zone for a touchback. And then the one that takes a couple of hops, you already made the one mistake. And now you're debating, what do I do here as the ball bounces towards the 10-yard line? You try scooping it up, you muff it, the Jets recover it at the 10. And then you put your defense right back out on the field, and you put their back right up against the wall because the Jets are in the red zone, hanging on to the possession of the rock. And so it was not good for Mecole Hardman by any stretch of the imagination. Again, not done. Still time to right the wrongs, I guess. Second guy, Jacob Monk. Jacob Monk, 5th-round pick out of Duke last year, was a healthy scratch for large parts of the season. I was in the camp that I at least thought about, when Elton Jenkins went down in that postseason affair against Philadelphia, and the Packers pivoted to Travis Glover and Kadeem Telfort, and it was a train wreck. Penalties, QB pressure, sacks, you name it. I thought, maybe they go to Monk. He's got versatility, right? Green Bay loves versatile offensive linemen. Monk can play center, he can play guard, but really it's more so right guard. Elton Jenkins was a left guard, so I was like, all right, maybe it makes sense. But it did cross my mind, like, man, why not Monk here instead? And Green Bay didn't go that way. And Monk was a healthy scratch for a lot of the season, which is fine. Rookie 5th-round pick. When I did my 53-man roster prediction earlier this offseason, I kind of had Monk as like a safe bet to make the roster. Now, one preseason game isn't going to derail all of that. Now, all of a sudden, I'm 100% certain Monk won't make the roster. But you allow a sack and have not 1, not 2, but 3 holding penalties. Not good. Flat out not good. And you would think, after 2 holding calls, you have to start like weighing the positives with the negatives if you're Jacob Monk in that spot. Like you're telling yourself, after allowing a sack and 2 holding calls, you're probably not in a great spot mentally, right? You're like, man, I'm getting toasted out here. So you have to start weighing like, if I get beat again, do I try to grab a hold and risk the refs just not seeing it and try to get away with it? Or do I do everything in my power to accept and I know I'm acting like this thought process moves so slowly, and in the NFL, it's just rapid fire right after the snap. But you would think after allowing a sack and a couple of holding calls, Monk would have maybe thought about, hey, if this happens again, do I just do everything in my power to accept, hey, there's probably going to be a QB pressure here, but hopefully, whether it's Willis, Sean Clifford, or El Gersma, because that's who was playing QB when Monk was out there, they just get rid of it. Or they found an outlet, or someone gets open. And do you roll those dice and say, I'm probably going to allow pressure here, and this isn't going well? Or do you just wrap it up? You would think after 2 holding calls, you'd be like, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure a sack doesn't happen here, but I just got beat again. And I know that's really, really slowing down the thought process, and maybe that's not exactly how it works, but 3 holds, a sack allowed was not good. I'm not going to say Jacob Monk absolutely won't make the roster now. I do think Glover being out for the season helps his case, because I had Glover as kind of like a fringe guy, but I had him on my 53-man roster. So I do believe him being out for the year kind of makes it easier to accept that Jacob Monk will probably be on the roster unless things really, really keep going south. Just not a good performance. Again, I thought the interior of the line struggled throughout certain junctures, whereas when I watched Jordan Morgan at left tackle and Anthony Belton at right tackle, I was like, hey, pretty damn good. Pretty damn good reps being out there. No quarterback pressures from the outside. It's coming from the inside. And Monk just had kind of a head-scratching performance where I thought firmly, this dude's making the roster. And now I'm just like, I don't need him to be incredible against the Colts. That'd be fantastic. But can't be, and you're talking about a guy who's not even playing the full game. Whatever snap count total he finished with against the Jets, can't be called for 3 holds and allow a sack. Not good. Not good for Monk. But again, Time to figure it out, right the wrongs. But he certainly, for me, went from a guy who was like, oh, yeah, he's making the roster. He just is. And not a guy who's going to get, like, consistent snaps, but just a depth piece on the offensive line. They used a 5th-round pick on him last year. They love versatile offensive linemen. He can play center and guard. He went from that to just need to see a little something. Need to see something better than the product that Monk put out there on Saturday night. And finally, could have gone a couple different directions with this one, but I went with Isaiah Simmons. He looked lost. There was one rep from the All-22 angle that I saw on Twitter this morning. Just not good. Like, game kind of looked like it was moving 1,000 miles per hour for Isaiah Simmons. You know, the one thing I loved that the Packers did with Simmons when they brought him in, and they've stuck to it for the most part. There was one rep last night. I'll get to that in a minute. That was different. But Green Bay brings in Isaiah Simmons, and it's like this uber athletic prospect, you know, out of Clemson, 1st-round pick, Arizona Cardinals a few years ago. He can play safety. He could play slot. He can play inside linebacker. You could line him up at defensive end. You could have him as an edge rusher. Like, this dude who's just oozing with athleticism, oozing with potential, and for whatever reason, the teams he's been on, Arizona and I think the New York Giants, they haven't been able to get it out of him, and they've tried different routes for success. And the one thing I liked about Green Bay is they brought him in and it was like, you're going to be a linebacker for us. We're not going to do the safety. We're not going to do the slot. We're not going to do the edge rush. We're not just going to bounce you around. We're going to try to have you hone in on one position, hone in on a few things, and excel at that and see if maybe we can milk the best out of you going that direction. And so I liked that Green Bay decided to go that route where it's, you're not going to bounce around at a million different positions, try to juggle a million different assignments and have a million things going on in your head. But even with him this offseason, pretty much strictly sticking to linebacker for the Packers, the game still looked like he was moving 1,000 miles per hour for him at times on Saturday night against New York. Now, there was a play very, 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 very early on where it looked like Green Bay almost was like flipping their normal base defense, and Lucas Van Ness was lined up technically on the end, but right next to him, almost at like an outside linebacker look, was Isaiah Simmons. And it's fun to get exotic and crafty with some of those looks. But I think for Simmons and his best shot to make this team, it's focusing on one position, that assignment, and I think Jeff Hafley and the Packers are doing a good job of that, and just try to excel at one spot instead of, you know, Travis Hunter's the hot new commodity. It's cornerback, it's wide receiver, it's both at a very high level in college at Colorado. Can he do that in the pros with Jacksonville? Like, we'll see. And I know that's different because it's two completely different sides of the ball, talking offense and defense. But Simmons, strictly a defensive player, again, coming out of Clemson, it was like, oh my gosh, this guy's a first-round talent. He's got the size, the speed, the athleticism, and he can play everywhere. He can play damn near everywhere. And so you try him damn near everywhere. And you can tell it's like, you know, it's overload. And so the Packers are trying to condense it for him into one spot, one position, just max out what you can do at inside linebacker. Wasn't great on Saturday night, but we'll have to see what it looks like throughout the rest of training camp and going forward into week 2 of the preseason against Indianapolis. Stock up, Amar Johnson, Brenton Cox Jr., Jordan Morgan, Anthony Belton. I said you could put Daniel Whalen, the punter, in there. Stock down, McCole Hardman, Jacob Monk, Isaiah Simmons. Let me know what you guys and gals think. Always appreciative of all the support. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Road to 1,000 by the end of the Packers season. Hopefully that's in February. We'll see you next time.